Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Play On podcast. This is the hurling edition. And what a weekend of hurling we had. A really high scoring week across all the games, excellent individual performances and excellent team performances. A contrast to the previous weeks of hurling where there was a lot of freeze. All the games this weekend were really open and really entertaining. I have Luke here with me to discuss it again. Luke, what did you make of the weekend?
Oh yeah, it was exactly as you were saying there. It was really entertaining kind of week, and a few of the games kind of really lived up to kind of our expectations, particularly the first game that we're going to go into here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. That first game is Galway against Waterford, a replay of the All Ireland final of 2017. Finished Galway 4 goals and 28 points, Waterford 3 goals and 23 points. A really free flowing game. There weren't many frees in this one. Both teams clearly looking for goals. It was a ridiculously high scoring game. Standout performances: Brian Concannon with 2 goals and 2 points, Conor Whelan with 6 points. Joe Canning moved into the full forward line. He ended up with 1 goal and 8 points. Just a brilliant performance from Galway. Good performance from some Waterford players as well. Caleb Lyons, especially with 5 points from the half back line. Desi Hutchinson and Shane Bennett also impressed. What did you make of this game?
Yep, absolutely. I think it was an interesting kind of start. You saw straight away Waterford with great goals through Jack Prendergast. Kind of looked like they were going to pull away. They were 7 points up at one stage, and then Galway just kind of completely took over after a water break in the first half, and it was And a lot of people were kind of saying kind of exhibition kind of feel to the game, like not much defending going on. But I think I really enjoyed it. And like you pointed out already, the likes of the inside forwards in particular, you look at Concannon, Whelan, and Desi Hutchinson, they were all completely on top and racked up some absolutely huge tallies, really.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And Waterford, in particular, like they've always had really talented forwards. I've always talked about how much I rate Stephen Bennett, Austin Gleeson as well. And Galway, we know how good their forward line is as well. So this game was always set up to be a cracker. And what struck me was how much the pendulum kind of swung in this game. Waterford started really well. Jack Prendergast scored a goal very early on, and Waterford ended up 7 points in front. And then Galway just took over from there, and they looked really impressive. Another interesting thing was Dahi Burke was playing at centre half back. We know how good he is at full back, but he does definitely have the athleticism to play further out the field. We know he plays in the midfield area for Corofin in Gaelic football, and I wonder anyway, does he have the athleticism? We know he probably does, to do the same in hurling.
I thought that was a really interesting aspect. Kind of, he kind of had a tough enough day, and the first week back, he looked kind of a bit rusty, kind of coming back in, but he looked a whole lot better this week. Like McInerney went back into fullback, and then that freedom out to go. And I was kind of, I suppose it's a rare sight to see Dahi Burke knocking over a point. But anyway, we got to see it this week. So yeah, his positioning will certainly be interesting as the year goes on, really. And like you were talking about that Galway forward line, they're the two kind of hard working wing forwards and Loftus and Adrian Toohey. And then you've Colin Mannion with Canning around as well. And then an forward line of Concannon, Whelan, and Connor Cooney. So like that's a ridiculously talented forward line. And I think has to be probably considered one of the most talented that there is like in the entire country at the moment.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And if that wasn't even good enough on its own, Evan Nyland comes on in the second
Yep.
half
Yeah.
and
Four
scores four
points.
points from
Yeah.
play. Unbelievable performance from him. He's such a talented player. I think he's the future of Galway hurling, and I think he might be a massive part of the present. I think to be honest, if Galway are going to win the All Ireland this year, I think this fella should be a starter for them.
Yep, absolutely. And that's not where they haven't even mentioned the likes of Joseph Cooney yet. So like there's so many options up front for Galway. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of what they settle on looking forward if Shane O'Neill wants to kind of keep two hard-working wing forwards in Loftus and Toohey in those positions, or will he maybe try and incorporate an island into a team as well?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. Interestingly, for Waterford, they looked a little bit exposed at the back again. Austin Gleeson was at centre half back once again, but it wasn't as solid as it was, particularly against Limerick this time.
Yeah, I think it was kind of this was like back to the first week against Cork when they that like they allowed the opposition to just kind of walk through again. Gleason kind of he was like he the previous week he'd looked kind of much more assured and more of a presence in centre half back, but kind of back to the same problems with no De Burka here now. That Waterford do need to try and find a centre half back fairly quick, and it's yet to be seen if Austin Gleeson can be the answer there this year. Maybe perhaps his best position is still up in centre half forward line. So yeah, I'd be curious to think if would maybe Kevin Moran be the answer to be a kind of fill the void for as long as De Burke is out injured, maybe.
Yeah, no, he'd definitely be an interesting candidate because obviously when it comes to experience, this guy has it in spades, and he's been around the block for Waterford. He's played with some of the best hurlers Waterford have ever produced, the likes of John Milan and so on. And he's been as close to winning an All Ireland for Waterford as they've ever been. Yeah, I think, in my opinion, I think Gleeson is the best candidate right now to play centre half back for Waterford, but I think I would be putting Calum Lyons on the right side of it. I would be putting Kevin Moran on the left side of him to try and strengthen up the wings of the half back line so that Gleeson maybe can cover a bit more and just sit there and hold the defence and not try and do too much from centre half back, because then maybe he can just focus on shoring up the defence rather than being like a Declan Hannon, like a playmaker style. I think Waterford just need to stick to basics and not let teams run through them like Galway did.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be curious though to see if maybe if Liam Cahill does try Kevin Moran back in centre half back and then have Calum Lyons and maybe Irla Daly beside him, and that might be able to free Gleeson back up to the half forward line, probably where he's at his best. So I'm interested to see kind of what way Waterford are going to go about it. But yeah, it is definitely something that they're going to have to hope improve significantly with, like, first round of Munster against Clare not too far away.
Yeah, and it would be very interesting to see how they go about that game. It would be very interesting to see how Galway get on in Leinster as well. But there's no doubt that this game, in my opinion, was the game of the weekend. And yeah, what more can you ask for from a game of hurling?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought absolutely fantastic. And just brief last point, kind of, I thought it was really interesting to see Joe Canning in full forward for. I know we've briefly touched on it already, but we haven't seen him play like a considerable amount of game time in that position kind of in a long time, really, nearly going back to about 2008 when you're last thinking about it. And he just looked, he was consistently out in front of Conor Prunty, scored a fair few, 1-4 I think it was from play, and he set up 2 goals as well with assists too. So he caused absolute havoc in there, and it's really interesting to see if Shane O'Neill will be looking to maybe rotate the team a bit and maybe send Canning into that full forward position for about 15-20 minutes in the game.
Yeah, that would be fascinating to me to see. And I think the key reason, in my opinion, along with Canning being an unbelievable hurler that he was brought around the middle, was because he needed to strengthen up the middle of the field, because Galway didn't have, in my opinion, the hurlers that they have now back then, particularly around 2012 and they're under Anthony Cunningham. They were still, relying a lot on the likes of Irla Tanyan, and they were bringing Damien Hayes out from the corner to wing forward. They were bringing Joe Canning out from full forward to the half forward line as well. Even though he still had 14 on his back then, he was carrying Galway on his own, and that could take a toll on him. But now he can kind of just play full forward. He can, because Galway have the hurlers out there now. They have the likes of Cathal Mannion, they have the likes of Evan Nyland, they have the likes of David Burke, Dahi Burke, Pádraig Mannion. They don't need Joe Canning around there, so maybe Joe Canning can actually settle down a full forward. And if he can settle down a full forward, there's no argument to say he won't be the most dangerous full forward in the country this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking back to, there was one point at one stage when long ball came in and he got out in front of Prunty to win a ball. He'd no right to win, and then right out the side and straight over the bar. So he's still, like, the talent levels he has are ridiculous. Another sideline cuts from about 60 yards out straight over the bar. I think if we can get to see him stay fit this year, I think the prospect of him in full forward could be really, really interesting.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. Okay, so that's our coverage of the Galway versus Waterford game done and dusted. We'll come back with our coverage of the Antrim against Wexford game next.
Pan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Play On podcast. Now we're going to have a look at Antrim against Wexford. A very eye-catching result again for Antrim. 1 goal and 21 points to 218. They draw with Wexford. Another very well-respected hurling team, despite their poor form of late after their defeat at the hands of Kilkenny. And this game had everything you wanted, a real championship feel to a game. 500 fans were in attendance at Corrigan Park. Of course, there was tension as well. Davy Fitz was sent off. Matthew O'Hanlon was sent off. Neil McManus was sent off. And there was a thrilling finish. Wexford looked to have it won. Liam McGovern struck over a late point, but a brilliant score by Keelan Malloy earned Antrim a hard-fought draw. What did you make of this game, Luke?
Yeah, I think it was certainly the most competitive game of the weekend. And geez, yeah, the last couple of minutes of it were extremely tense. Really, really exciting game. And yeah, I think from a competitive standpoint, probably my favorite game to watch this weekend. So yeah, absolutely loved it. And yeah, plenty of talking points out of this one.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. The first one that is the key talking point is Matthew O'Hanlon's red card. Looked a bit harsh to me. McManus seemed to be wrestling them to the ground. I don't really know what else, your instincts tell you there to do. I understand why he did it. Technically, by the rule book, once you grab the face guard, it's a black and white situation. But
yeah,
it's a bit harsh for me.
It's harsh. Yeah, that was my instinct was that it was O'Hanlon. McManus seemed to be completely the aggressor in the situation, wrestling kind of O'Hanlon to the floor, and it was nearly kind of he reached out kind of to grab at the helmet, and then the helmet comes off, and once the helmet comes off and you've made contact with it, it's going to be given as a red card by the book. So it just seems a funny situation when the aggressor gets a yellow card in that situation, and then O'Hanlon gets the red. But yeah, so I think that was obviously a huge moment. Kind of Antrim had a lot of momentum at the time, and that just kind of added to it a little bit. Perhaps maybe Neil McManus a bit fortunate not to be sent off a few minutes later too, with a kind of clumsy enough challenge with a trip on an Antrim player, but he eventually did get sent off just about a minute before the normal time ended. So again, that kind of was another shift in the game where Wexford seemed to take back over, and that after Antrim kind of started to look kind of well on top. So yeah, there were so many roller coasters in this game, and we haven't even talked about the Davy Fitz red card yet.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It was a mad roller coaster of a game, a lot of emotions in it. The crowd being back certainly hyped up Davey, certainly hyped up Darren Gleeson, everyone there. To be playing back in front of a crowd means so much to these players because, a lot of players said that last year felt like they were only playing training matches, but they were playing the All-Ireland Championship. And the amount of games you were watching last year where you would think to yourself, my God, like if there was a crowd at this game now, the atmosphere would be incredible. Particularly the semi-final between Waterford and Kilkenny, that game sticks out to me as having what an atmosphere this game would have if there was a full house watching it. But yeah, no, I was very confused by the Matthew O'Hanlon sending off. It reminded me a lot of what happened with David Clifford back against Tyrone in the league when Tyrone brought on a substitute and he went straight over and wrestled David Clifford to the ground, therefore getting David Clifford a second yellow card, and the Tyrone substitute only got his first yellow card. I think it is something that needs to be investigated a little bit more, as in punishing the aggressor rather than punishing, in some ways, the victim.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, and I think a lot of people kind of saw that, but it's just the technicality of grabbing the face mask, and that's what it's always going to lead to a red. Well, yeah, I think it's an interesting point you made about the crowd. Kind of definitely seemed to have Davy Fitz kind of hyped up. Like there was that stage in the first half when I've never seen somebody be so adamant about a sideline decision and so worked up about it, and it was just clear that Davy was he really wanted to win this one. So I don't know.
You wonder though if that's the panic stations we were talking about the previous week.
Yeah, perhaps it might be that like Wexford, he needs to do something to get them fired up, because they're just kind of seem to be, prior to this, they seem to be tiptoeing a little bit, and maybe this is just classic kind of a Davy move where he's does something outrageous to get kind of us versus them mentality going within the camp, and to get the lads fired up and playing back to the best of their ability.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. That is a Davy Fitzgerald tactic, and it usually does work for him. But he must have been panicking in the 65th minute. Obviously, Shay Shannon, the substitute from Antrim, found the back of the net to give them a lead by 119 to 215 with a few minutes left. And at that stage, if you're thinking then, if you're Wexford there, back-to-back defeats, the first real challenges. I know the Clare game was a great game, but you lose to Kilkenny, then you go up to Antrim and you lose there as well. It would have looked very dangerous for Davy and for Wexford approaching the championship. They've managed to get themselves a draw. They nearly got themselves a victory. Do you think he'll be happy, or do you think he'll be disgusted with the result?
I think in the end, I think he'll probably be satisfied enough. I think it's gonna, like we've talked about this so much, but it's such a hard place to go, and I think the draw was completely fair result. Obviously, the end, like you look at the Keelan Malloy point, it was the literally last puck of the game. So when you're in that position from a Wexford perspective, it has to be disappointing that they can't hang on for the 1 point lead. But yeah, I don't think he'd be too upset. They're safe in the division. They won't be relegated. They won't be winning it, but like it's more game time for them. And yeah, I suppose that they didn't lose the game. I think he won't mind, because that Antrim team is starting to look very, very good, and they'll be full of confidence going into that first game against Dublin and Parnell.
Yeah, I agree with you to a point, but I do think that Davy would be very disappointed, especially considering the start that Wexford had. They had early goals from Conor MacDonald and Paul Morris. They looked to be on top, and at that stage, if it's a top team and they get 2 early goals, the game would be past Antrim, in my opinion. But I think Wexford are a bit shaky, they're a bit wobbly, and once Antrim put up a bit of momentum, especially after Matthew O'Hanlon's red card, I think, to be honest, I'm a bit surprised that Antrim didn't actually push on and win it themselves.
Yeah, I think the McMahon being sent off in the 69th minute definitely kind of shifted the tide back towards Wexford's favour a little bit. And then, yeah, the last couple of minutes was kind of trading scores a little bit. Then once they went back down to 14, so it was yeah, like we've talked about so much, that there were so many roller coasters in this game, and it was the momentum changed so often. So yeah, definite championship kind of feel to this game. So yeah, it's this type of stuff we want to be seeing later on the year as well.
100%. And you touched on Antrim's game against Dublin. I'm just wondering, where would you see Antrim's chances now? Because everyone labelled it as a shock when Antrim beat Clare, and we came out and we said that we didn't actually think it was that much of a shock when you looked into the details about the game and when you looked into the bigger picture. Would you label, if Antrim got the better of Dublin in the championship, would you label that as a shock?
I probably wouldn't. No. I think well, you look at the league fixture where Dublin won by about 7 points in the end. They're probably comfortable enough, but Antrim had all sorts of free taking problems as well in that game. But I definitely wouldn't consider it a shock now at this stage. You're looking at the form of both teams at the moment, and there's no basis to suggest that Dublin are in any better form than Antrim. And you look at individual wise, I don't think the Dublin squad is that much better than the Antrim squad too. So obviously, it being in Parnell's kind of is a big boost for Dublin, but I wouldn't be I wouldn't be too surprised to see Antrim kind of coming out in a one-offs game and giving Dublin a mighty game anyway.
Yeah, definitely, because you have to think about the players that Antrim have. The likes of James McNaughton scored 7 points. Keelan Malloy was brilliant. Niall McKenna's aerial ability is just outrageous as well. And we already know how good Clark and McManus are. They've an exceptional bunch of players right now there, Antrim.
Yep, absolutely. And like, yeah, you look as well in the back line, full back and centre half back, Gerald Walsh and Paddy Burke. They've got those two, the middle of that defence anchored down. They're
the
like permanent
Elliott
figures
well.
in there. Yep, and so they've a solid team. You can predict their team pretty much every week. They know exactly what they're doing, so they look in great shape. And just to touch on those players he mentions, like James McNaughton was man of the match of the weekend. He was absolutely superb for the entire game. Really, he was one of that midfield line were absolutely incredible, really. And as well, just to touch on Keelan Malloy, for me, he's probably been my player of the league so far. Every single game he's played, he's been really, really good. And yeah, I think he's been the most consistent performer in the entire National League, in this year.
Yeah, no, there's a good argument for that. There's no doubt about that. So that is our review of the Antrim against Wexford game. We will come back next up with our review of the Limerick against Cork game here on the Play On podcast.
Pan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Play on GAA podcast, the hurling edition. Now we're going to talk about Limerick against Cork. So a massive weekend for Limerick, a massive win for Limerick. Their first win of 2021. They beat Cork by 33 points to 219 at the Gaelic grounds. Bit of deception on Cork's part, however, making 10 changes. The most notable name that didn't start was Patrick Horgan. But, a good win for Limerick. They needed to get this win. But is there an element now that they didn't beat Cork, they didn't thrash them, and they were a lot closer to their full, strongest starting 15 than Cork were?
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think Limerick were really comfortable. Like they'd scored 20 points by half time, and this game kind of looked over fairly early. I think it kind of looked over as soon as you saw the kind of team sheets with no Cadigan, no Horgan. Like I'd really thought that Cork were going to kind of continue building on a bit of form that they'd kind of developed, and then I suppose I was really surprised to see the team without the lads we've mentioned, without kind of Tim O'Mahony, without all these other kind of star performers so far. So yeah, I think once you saw that, it was kind of evident that Cork they don't want to be giving away much, considering that these teams will be playing each other in less than a month's time in a game that really matters, as opposed to I suppose what we saw over the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. But even though Limerick had a very strong team out, they had one name which definitely was interesting, Colin Coughlin, who played in the half-back line. He's a Leaving Cert student, and he scored 2 points from the half-back line. What did you make of this fella?
Yeah, I thought like physically as well, for a Leaving Cert student, 18 years old, he was a lot bigger than all the Cork half forward lines, and just there's that physical edge that Limerick seem to have. Even the young fellas coming through. You look at Cathal O'Neill coming off the bench, another Leaving Cert student. They're both huge, all huge men, kind of coming straight into that team, and it's such a help for young fellas coming through when they already have this aspect to their game. And like you look at Colin Coughlin on one side, Dermot Burns was probably man of the match on the other side. He had 3 points and he just absolutely lorded it. Any long puck outs from Cork went just straight into his hands. So yeah, once that kind of half back line became so clearly dominant, like there was only going to be one winner in this game. And it's like if Limerick continued to do that, it's going to be some advantage they're going to have there.
Yeah, and that's always been one of their strongest points, is their dominance under puckouts, particularly along the half-back line and the half-forward line from their own puckouts. Another huge positive for Limerick was the form of Cian Lynch. I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I thought he was picking up like all the pockets of space kind of in the first half, particularly that Cork just couldn't get a handle on him really, and he seemed to be completely unmarked at times. He was just anywhere there was any part of free kind of bit of space in the pitch, he ended up in it, and then it was going straight over the bar every time. You look at him, Tom Morrissey in that line, both scored 4 points each, both really, really good. I thought an interesting aspect though was Limerick, how they were dealing with Cork's kind of short game and how they approached the Cork puckouts. So like as we've seen in the league so far, you look at Patrick Collins has kind of been poking it out kind of short, and Cork's been building from there. And anyway, Limerick, I suppose they just pushed up as opposed to their usual kind of approach of setting traps and allowing it pass out to the cornerback. They pushed right up today and then tried to force Cork to play right through them. And Cork, I suppose Patrick Collins persisted with this kind of short puck outs. But yeah, they kind of got completely bottled up at a lot of times, and Limerick got an awful lot of joy turning over high up the pitch.
Yeah, they definitely did. And you wonder, is this what they're going to do in Championship now? Because as you said, Limerick's usual way of playing would be to sit back and set traps. You wonder if this was the free pass, if you like, to see if pushing up will work. And as you said, they got joy out of pushing up on Cork. Do you think it will be different in Championship? Do you think Cork might see this and then switch up Patrick Collins' puck out strategy? Or do you think they're going to stick with what they're doing right now?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because after the game, Kieran Kingston said he was delighted how they stuck with it and how that they're still building. This is how they want to play, and that he was delighted to see that Patrick Collins stuck with it and that they stayed true to the game plan, kind of. But then at the same time, I was a bit surprised to see that Limerick kind of did push up completely on the puckouts, because now it gives Cork a lot of tape to work with, a lot of things that they can examine how Limerick pushed up on it. and that they could probably the next month can kind of come up with ways to maybe work around this without altering their game plan entirely. And if they look for kind of areas where little pockets where they can hit puck outs consistently. So yeah, I thought maybe Limerick might have played their traditional game and let Cork try to build it out and save this to kind of surprise them in later on in the championship game. So yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. Maybe Limerick are just confident that once they push up, that Cork will not be able to play through them with the size of the forwards that they have.
And that's the thing, thinking from a Limerick perspective, is that do Cork have enough time to switch now? And is this obviously this could be just a scare tactic from Limerick, that when the championship finally comes around, Cork could have thought about this from here till that first game. And then when it finally comes to showtime, then Limerick just revert back to what they used to do, and Cork wasted a lot of time thinking about something that Limerick were never going to do.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, there's this whole game there was a whole lot of mind games going on with it, like especially with the team sheets, everything like that, and then the whole style of play and everything. So yeah, Cork didn't seem upset at all to really lose this game. They got a few lads that were kind of short of minutes, a bit more game time, and they rested kind of a lot of the key names. Like Fitzgibbon didn't play at all, and Mahoney didn't play at all, no Cadigan. So it's kind of hard to read into, but I think an important thing to note is that Cork were still able to create plenty of goal chances in this game. Yeah. They scored 2. Jack O'Connor scored 2 lovely goals. Like there was the Richie English flick onto the crossbar to prevent another certain goal. Yeah, absolutely. Like, and so that is the absolute positive for Cork, is that, like, you look at them in the league so far this year, they are scoring a huge amount of goals so far. And they might be quietly confident that they can score a fair few goals against Limerick going forward once they have a full strength team out.
And they will have to do that against Limerick, because Limerick you're guaranteed that when the pressure's on, Limerick seem to rack up close to or more than 30 points every single time. So if Cork are going to compete with Limerick, they need to hit the back of the net, in my opinion, at least 3 times.
Yep, yeah, definitely. And I think they've got the players for it. You put Patrick Horgan back in, Cadigan, and then like Jack O'Connor in that corner, like, seems to have a real eye for goal. And that you're not even factoring kind of young fellas like Alan Connolly and Shane Barrett coming off the bench, who definitely have goal in their mind at the first kind of opportunity. So yeah, I think it's that is the thing that will be most pleasing for Kieran Kingston, is that the goals seem to be coming very freely for Cork right now. But yeah, I wouldn't read too much into this game. I think it's very hard to know exactly where Cork are at right now. They're probably fortunate to be within 7 or 8 points of Limerick this weekend, considering the balance to play. But yeah, so I think it'll be completely different teams lined out for the championship game. It's just interesting. Will Cork be far enough down the line to have joy with this new system against Limerick's high press, I suppose?
Oh, I can't wait for that game, honestly. That game, early contender for game of the championship already, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. That will set the template for the entire championship for what's to come, I reckon.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. Okay, guys, so that is our review of Limerick against Cork done. We'll come back with Dublin against Clare.
Pan!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Play On Podcast Hurling Edition. Now we're going to have a look at Dublin against Clare. Dublin losing by 34 points to 2 goals and 23. And they had home advantage. The game was at Parnell Park. And this game was the Tony Kelly show. 20 points for the All-Star of last year and the Hurler of the Year nominee last year. This guy is incredible, but we already know that apart from him, good performances from Aidan McCarthy and an all-round good performance from Clare, racking up 34 points, as I've mentioned. What did you make of this game?
Yeah, I suppose, first of all, from a Dublin perspective, pretty disappointing. I tipped them to win this one. I thought probably that, I suppose, like the last couple of weeks, that I was nearly hoped that they kind of turned the corner a little bit. And this was kind of the challenge, was to come into a game where they're less favoured than the opposition, and then to kind of prove that they're here and that they're contending this year. But once again, I suppose Dublin kind of come up with a way to kind of lose. Yeah, Owen O'Donnell sent off late on when the game's kind of in the balance. And yeah, Dublin, they just kind of they they continue kind of to disappoint, and that they're just that little bit kind of shorter than where they probably should be, really. So yeah, a disappointing one. But from a Clare perspective, they're starting to look very sharp. Like we've already talked, huge tally that they put up, and yeah, they after kind of shaky enough start to the league, things starting to look a little bit better now.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. Clare have definitely improved over the last couple of weeks. Interestingly enough, Aaron Fitzgerald, who's a former Clare footballer, started for Clare, and Colin Galvin, who missed last year's championship with a groin injury, he was back for his first start of this year. He's a massive plus
Yep.
for Clare to have him back.
Yeah, absolutely. He probably didn't have his greatest game the weekend. He had very few kind of touches, but yeah, just to kind of get him back involved, and that the more game time he gets, the more involved he will be. So if they can get a few more minutes in him before the Waterford game and championship, yeah, they'll be absolutely delighted with how it's going. Otherwise, teams start to look very settled as well for them. They've like the John Collins remains at centre half back. They've Shanahan still in full forward, and you've Tony Kelly back fit and everything. So it seems to be the team's definitely taking shape now for this year. So and they still have David McInerney to come back in. So there is options there. Like we've already talked about, Aidan McCarthy looks to be turned into an absolute superstar for them as well. So there is certainly positives.
Yeah, there definitely is positives for Clare. But one thing that was worrying was just how much now. Just want to state before I say this that I do think that Donald O'Donnell is one of the best defenders in the country. I think he's the man marking jobs he does on forwards is superb. But the way he just took Shanahan out of the game, looking down the line that if Clare come up against, a Galway or something and, Shanahan is being picked up by Daithí Burke, the way Shanahan went out of the game, that should be worrying for Clare, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think it happens a lot though. O'Donnell kind of can gets the better of a lot of players. Like so, it's yeah, I think Shanahan's form's been pretty good. So I still think he's certainly the answer in full forward, and that when the ball is right going into him, I think he can cause absolute carnage in there with Shane O'Donnell kind of feeding off him. So yeah, I think that's kind of settled now. Is that Conlon will be the centre half back this year, and I think Shanahan will be in full forward. So I think it's just more interesting to kind of wonder where David McInerney maybe fits back in. Does he go back into midfield now? So I think that's the only kind of question mark over kind of team selection. I think otherwise it's going to be pretty similar to the team we saw at the weekend.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. As for Dublin, do you see them taking many positives out of this game? They were heavily reliant to 13 more points from Donald Burke. 9 of those were frees. But apart from that, a goal and 2 points from Ronan Hayes, a goal and 1 from Keane Boland, points from Eamon Dillon, Mark Shute, 2 from Danny Sutcliffe and 2 from Chris Crummy, and Dara Gray chipped in with a point as well. We've touched previously on how we think Antrim are set going into their game against Dublin. Do you think Dublin are set well enough to fend them off?
I think a lot of the analysis is based on that league game where Dublin did get the better of them, but I would be a bit concerned from Dublin perspective coming into this kind of like even if they do get over the line against Antrim, I think they could be heavily beaten by Galway. So I think they're not in a great place at the moment. Like we've talked about, like how reliant they are on Donald Burke right now. I know Ronan Hayes was good with the goal and 2 points, but and he does look dangerous. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think Dublin know what they're doing really at the moment. Kind of like what way they want to play. You look at Crummy was kind of back, kind of hovering around the half back line a bit, playing around midfield, and he's being moved all over the place. They can't work out where to play him at the moment. There's about 5 cornerbacks pretty much named the team with Dunphy, O'Donnell, O'Callaghan, Paddy Smith was there, James Madden was playing midfield. Like the balance just seems kind of all wrong at the moment. So it's I don't know. I don't know.
That's the thing that messes with my head about this Dublin team. We were speaking there about how Clare are moving towards a settled team. And in my opinion, this might sound controversial, but I think apart from Tony Kelly and John Conlon, Clare aren't as naturally talented as a Galway or a Limerick. But what you do know about Clare is they will build a team around their best players. Each game that Dublin play, I wouldn't be able to guess what the starting team is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you look at Conor Burke was back in centre half back after playing midfield the last few weeks, and I know Rush wasn't around this week, but like Rush has been playing full forward in previous years, and then you're just looking at all this. Like Paddy Smith at halfback, I've never even seen Paddy Smith play there before for Dublin. So it's really hard to know.
It seems like the
Yeah.
wrong time to do it, because we spoke about how Antrim, you can name the Antrim team before it even gets officially named. We know who's going to play for them. We don't know who's going to play for Dublin. And what that can breed in Antrim is a familiarity, a system that they know what they're doing. And often it can be the best system that wins, not the better players. And if Dublin have better personnel on the field than Antrim, but Antrim know better what they're doing and their system is better, then Antrim can overcome Dublin. I think Dublin should be using this time to put out their starting 15 that they're going to have against Antrim more as close to it as they can have, so that they know what they're doing, so that if they come up against Galway, they might be able to take them on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, like it's a great point, because like you can name the middle lines of that Antrim team. You know that Gerald Walsh is going to be full back. You know that Paddy Burke's going to be centre half back. Like, and in midfield, you know that's going to be McNaughton and Keelan Malloy. So like there is a real like permanent kind of structure in that team. And if you compare those positions to Dublin, Owen O'Donnell's the only guarantee in full back, and then the rest of it could be anyone. It could be they could rotate it completely. So next week it could be 3 entirely new players in those positions. So I think it's I think it's really, really hard for them to build any momentum when they're chopping and changing so much. And Matty, it's a bit disappointing that they haven't just picked a couple of players to play those positions and just to stick with them and back them. Like you look at James Madden last year was playing cornerback. Now he finds himself in midfield. Like, I don't get how players are supposed to build any momentum when they're not staying in any positions for any period of time, and that they have to kind of evolve constantly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's hard, and I think it shows a little bit of impatience as well. It's almost as if Willie's thinking, well, that didn't work. Now we're going to try something completely different. You have to stick with an idea for a while. You have to stick with a lineup. The example I will give is John Conlon at centre half back. We didn't like it at the start. We were talking about how he should be back in the full forward line. To be honest, I still think
he's played
he'd be a
4
danger.
full games. Yeah, he's been
doing
given
really
4
well.
full games to play, and he's played every single minute of the league so far in that position. And look, he looks a lot more solid now than that first game, which is obviously going to happen when you're trusted so much for this position. Like Lohan, to be fair, he's clearly identified him as somebody that can play this position, and he said that he's going to give him every opportunity to prove it this year now.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that, and the trust that he showed, John Conlon has definitely taken confidence from that as well. Because I've no doubt that Lohan went to Conlon and said, "You're my centre half back this year, and I'm going to play you there until it works," and that breeds confidence in the player as well.
And we already know that it's going to be Conor Cleary and John Conlon, and midfield you're going to have Cotton Malone and Cullum Galvin. So we already know exactly how Clare are going to line up in the middle this year. And then that's when you can incorporate in the forward line. You can have the Aidan McCarthy's, Tony Kelly's and Shanahers. So that's like, it allows them to be more fluid up front, because they know they've got a real structure kind of central defence already in place there now, and they know how they're going to be. And that this is why the Clare could seem to continuously have the edge over the likes of the Dublin, I suppose.
Yeah, and speaking of Clare, how do you see them set now going into the Munster Championship? They're in the draw on the side of Tipperary and Waterford. Do you give them any chance of making the Munster final?
Yeah, I think they're kind of quietly building a bit of momentum now at this stage. Like, they last year lost out kind of to Waterford and stuff, but I think they'll be quietly confident in that going into that Waterford game first. I think they'll probably will be considered the underdogs in that based off Waterford's season last year, but I think that game's certainly 50-50. And I think like once they're fit and they have all the players that we've talked about, once they're all available for it, I would, I'd 100% say that game's 50-50.
Yeah, definitely. In my opinion, when you have a player as good as Tony Kelly, you've always got a chance.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah. Again, it's another kind of interesting one, and the perfect time for Clare to start winning a few games.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Okay, so that is our coverage of the Clare versus Dublin game that took place last weekend. We're going to come back with our coverage of Kilkenny versus Laois.
Plan.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Play on Podcast Hurling Edition. Now we're going to have a look at both the Kilkenny versus Laois and Westmeath versus Tipperary games. So no surprise in the results here. Kilkenny 129, Laois 22 points. Westmeath losing by 16 points to 427 to Tipperary. We're going to start with the Kilkenny versus Laois game. 100% record remains for Kilkenny and Brian Cody. They looked comfortable again. Bit of a good fight from Laois in the second half, but Kilkenny simply too strong for them in this one.
Yep, absolutely. And Kilkenny kind of booking their place in a league final. If this ever happens, we don't know at the moment with COVID and everything, and the calendar's kind of all over the place, but they will be topping the group in Division 1B anyway. So yeah, I think they'll be absolutely delighted with kind of how it's gone. Like every game they've played, really, they've looked very, very comfortable in them. And they've, another kind of win. And this week they got the rest TJ, they got the rest Pádraig Walsh. So I think no complaints from Cody this week.
Yeah, no, he'd definitely have no complaints. And whenever they win without TJ Reid, it shows that they can adapt. And their young forwards look very good again this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are so many options kind of coming through here now. Like looking kind of at that full forward line, James Bergen kind of after last week was kind of taken off early against Wexford. But anyway, back in the team, scored 5 points from play. Owen Cody, 11 points. I know a lot of frees. And then Blanchfield as well, full forward was constant threat, 1-2. And like all these factors coming in. And then you're not even mentioning Adrian Mullen, 2 points. Billy Ryan hit a point. Like he was exceptional last week. So there's so many options up front for Kilkenny now. And that kind of forward line to build around TJ, there's like a whole lot of options there now. So kind of interesting to see how they're going to approach it this year and what kind of 6 forwards they will be picking, like considering that Colin Fennelly will be absent for the year.
Yeah, they'll definitely back their chances more to get into the team now that, of course, you've mentioned that Fennelly isn't involved this year. Do you think that they'll take any confidence from the fact that they're going into the year as Leinster champions?
Yep, absolutely. I think I think that game against Galway last year will be that final kind of. They seem to be kind of beating all ends up in that game, and then there was kind of the 2 quick goals, and it was nearly a smash and grab in that way. But I think Kilkenny they'll take a lot from that game, that they know that they just kind of seem to have an edge in Galway at the moment, and that they have a psychological thing on them, and that game was kind of really funny. But I think they'll take an awful lot from that, and you're looking kind of forward line this year. I think you'll have Adrian Mullen and Donnelly beside TJ, and then you can have a full forward line. Like you've Owen Cody in there, you've James Bergen in there, you've so many options really. So it'll be really, and we haven't even talked about Walter Walsh yet. So I think, and you've Martin Keown as well as another name too. So I think it'll be exciting to see kind of what way Cody kind of goes about it, and I think I would probably put them as my third favourites behind Galway and Limerick for the All-Ireland this year.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I think Kilkenny look very, very well drilled. And of course, when Brian Cody's ever there, he can never fully write Kilkenny off. But I don't think we can take too much from this game. I know we've talked about the forwards looking good again, but they are playing against Laois, with all due respect to Laois. Laois have been beaten in every game that they've played in the league so far. And now, of course, they're facing relegation. How do you see their chances now?
Yeah, I think it's been a tough campaign for them. Like we've already talked about, they'll probably take a bit of comfort with they kind of had a fair old go in the second half, and that they for long parts of it they did manage to stay within the game. They'll be happy with a few of the performances. Ross King with 3 points from play. Paddy Purcell was good again with 2 points. Jack Kelly 2 points from wing back. So they will be happy enough. But I think it's just a level kind of too high for them right now, kind of, and it's probably not the same quality of team that went on that championship run when they beat Dublin that year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think when you're a team like Laois coming up, I would say very similar to almost how Dublin are right now. That Laois, when they were full strength in the championship last year, even under Eddie Brennan, we saw what a game they gave Dublin. We saw what a game they gave Clare in the qualifiers. They had a very, very good team. The likes of Paddy Purcell and Enda Rowland in goal are as good as you'll find in the country. They need to be full strength, though. I'd almost look at it very similar to how Wexford, say, if you were to take out Lee Chin, Conor MacDonald, their key players, which Laois have lost key players, then the standard of their team goes down drastically. And for Laois, it's the same. When Laois aren't at 100%, in my opinion, they're not able to play at this level. But when they are 100%, they are able to play at this level. So it's up to Cheddar Plunkett, in my opinion. He's a great manager. But I think if Laois want to keep playing at this level, Cheddar has to get everything out of the players that Laois have available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I think it'll be a tough all year kind of ahead of them, and they could probably do with a move back to a more traditional calendar where there's more fixtures. Maybe say like if they go back to a round robin kind of system when a COVID free time kind of, I think that would be more beneficial to Laois and will help them build with more kind of competitive games. And yeah, I think that's what they need. These kind of one-off kind of championship games with maybe a qualifier as well thrown in isn't going to really stand them much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. How do you rate their chances against Wexford though? Because we were talking about a vulnerable Wexford, a Wexford that, you can rattle them a bit, and haven't seen how Antrim took them to the wire. How much of a chance do you give Laois?
I would say that I think that Antrim are a long way ahead of Laois right now, and I think I can't see Laois getting anywhere near Wexford, to be honest. I think he'll probably go to a similar kind of pattern to the earlier league game where Wexford were very, very comfortable. But yeah, I think Laois they need to look to be competitive in these games and stuff, and they need to just keep building, maybe develop get a few more young fellas through kind of. There is a bit of talent there coming through, especially like McAvoy and centre half back there at the weekend. But yeah, I probably can't see any scenario in which they give Wexford much of a real scare.
Yeah, I think I would definitely tip Wexford to win that game. Moving on from that game, Westmeath 16 points, Tipperary 4 goals and 27 points. Another big loss for Westmeath, in my opinion. It's a bit unfair on them that they're playing at this level. For Tipperary, only good signs. The return of Seamus Callanan into the team. Brendan Maher looked superb. He won man of the match. And they brought through some of their youngsters.
Yep, definitely. I think probably not a whole lot to be said from this game, really. Seems to have taken kind of the pattern of a lot of other games that Westmeath have played where, yeah, the results kind of never really in doubt, really. It was a pretty strong team named by Tip, not a whole lot of changes, kind of, which I think Westmeath would be a bit disappointed about. I suppose maybe the interesting parts some of the young fellas kind of coming through into the Tip team, like you were saying, like again, more game time for Paddy Cadell and Brian McGrath, and then yeah. So I think it's a question, I suppose, is like whether these fellas will be starting come later in the championship. Perhaps there's a vacancy in one of the cornerback spots for Brian McGrath. There seems to be a spot in midfield up for grabs now that Noel McGrath's back up in the forwards. And I think we will see Paddy Cadell and Brian McGrath, fair chance of them starting when we come to the championship in about a month's time.
Yeah, and along with Seamus Callanan for Tipperary, the two men that look like they're going to be huge in the forwards this year for Tipperary is, you've mentioned how Noel McGrath has gone back into the forwards, and Jason Ford was absolutely superb on the weekend. This guy is an unbelievable hurler. But we've already touched on that, how good he is. I think Noel McGrath seems to be orchestrating the play from centre half forward, just like he did when he played there at the start of the 2010s under Liam Sheedy and Declan Ryan and so on. He's a superb hurler. Him back at centre half forward definitely is intriguing. And you wonder now, is him and Jason Ford going to be a bit of a double act this summer for Tipperary?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're going to see that forward line. I think it'll be Dan McCormick, Noel McGrath with Jason Ford out there. And then you can throw in a full forward line of John McGrath, Callan and Bubbles. So I think like there's some amount of firepower up there kind of, and they could score as much as they wanted to on a given day, really. So yeah, it's really intriguing looking at Tip. I think you might see Michael Breen, Paddy Cadell, that midfield line. And then in the half backs as well, you've got them all the Mars. I think Paddy will be fullback this year, but you're looking at Brendan Maher, Ronan Maher, you've Barry Heffernan, you've Seamus Kennedy all going for spots there. So there's some serious competition for spots in that team now. So I think they're in a not bad place as well. I know I was saying Kilkenny probably my third favourites, but Tip are probably very close to Kilkenny for that spot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Tipperary are very well stocked, and they seem to be flying under the radar a bit. They haven't really put a foot wrong, to be honest, so far in the league. They haven't looked awful in any game that they've played. and Liam Sheedy's a very shrewd operator. He's won All-Irelands in both of his reigns as manager. And of course, they're the last team other than Limerick to win the All-Ireland. And these guys are coming through now. The aforementioned Cadell and McGrath. These guys are coming through from very successful juvenile teams, and they're used to winning. And they're going to expect to win at senior. And eventually, I think they will win one with these crop of players. I think they're too talented to not win an All-Ireland at senior level. I'm just fascinated to see, will it be this year?
Yep, absolutely. And like, we're not even talking about the likes of Jake Morris as well, who's been thereabouts for a while now. Mark Keogh coming off the bench, scored 1-2 at the weekend. Robert Byrne as well is coming through. I know he was sent off, but he looks very promising too. So and Craig Morgan as well, the captain of those underage teams that have been so successful, finally kind of got on as a sub. He's been tipped to kind of come through for a long time. So yeah, there is plenty of young talent there as well, and tip going forward. So they, in the next few years, do look promising as well for them, because there is so much talent in those teams that haven't been kind of used too heavily just yet.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Okay, so that, guys, is our reviews of the Kilkenny versus Laois and Tipperary versus Westmeath games. And that concludes our review of all the hurling matches that happened over the last weekend. We will come back with our preview of next weekend's Allianz Hurling fixtures.
Plan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Play on GA podcast Hurling Edition. In this part, we're going to give a preview of next weekend's fixtures and try and predict who is going to win these games. We don't always get them right, but we do our best. The first game we're going to have a look at, Luke, is Wexford against Dublin. 3:00 throw-in on Saturday. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, this is, and again, another interesting one. I think I tipped Dublin last week against Clare, and I think I'm going to learn my lesson from last week, where you don't tip Dublin against teams that are the favourites. So yeah, I'm going to go with Wexford probably to win this one by a few points. Wexford haven't been flying lately, but I think them just have been a little bit better than Dublin, I suppose. And yeah, I think maybe 4 or 5 points down in Wexford Park. Yeah, Wexford to win.
Yeah, sadly, I'm going to agree with you. I think that Wexford just have a little bit of a leg up on Dublin right now. And as you said, Dublin seem to have a mental barrier against these teams. I feel like, again, Dublin are going to throw in some mad starting lineup. They'll probably start Chris Crummy at fullback or something. And yeah, I tip Wexford to get the job done here. Moving on to the next game, 3:00 in Corrigan Park, Belfast. Now, you said that Antrim are streets ahead of Laois. Do you back them to prove that on Saturday?
Yep, I do. I'm going to stick with that. And I think they might comfortably win this one up in Belfast. I'm going to go between 5 to 10 points. They're going to win this one by. I think, yeah, I've been really, really impressed with Antrim. And this is probably their opportunity to show how far they've come in these first couple of games, kind of coming up against a team that has kind of been down in Joe McDonough as well, and in previous years as well. So I think this is an opportunity for them to kind of show that they are the up-and-coming team. And yeah, I'm going to back them to win by that amount.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that if it was down in O'Moore Park in Portlaoise, I think it might be a bit of a different proposition for Antrim. But considering that Clare and Wexford have gone up to Antrim and neither of them have come back with the win, I'd be stunned if Laois came back with a victory. I'm going with Antrim to get the job done here.
Yeah, I think though as well, just to say, I think this is I think that'll be an absolutely intriguing game. And I think that could actually probably be one of the best games to watch this weekend.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that Antrim play some very attractive hurling, and I think Laois do leave themselves a bit open. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, once again, there'll be a crowd as well thrown in as well. So that'll be another factor. Probably the only hurling game of the weekend with the crowd. And I think the games are certainly improved by having them.
Yeah, definitely. There's nothing beats having a crowd there. It definitely makes it feel like a championship game. One game that definitely will be very interesting and almost hard to call now. This one, it wouldn't have been hard in my opinion before Clare started getting their act together, but now they get Kilkenny down in Cusack Park in Ennis. Kilkenny coming down with a 100% record. In my opinion, this could be their toughest test yet.
Yep, completely. I think the biggest lesson I've taken from the first couple of weeks of doing predictions here is that teams are kind of changing up their lineups a fair bit now. I'm looking at this kind of Kilkenny are they're safe. They're guaranteed to top this group. I think they might completely change up the team and go with something, give a few of the fringe lads a bit of time to get a bit of game time. So I think Clare might win this by a point or two.
Yeah, I agree with you actually here. I think that Clare will look at this game as a massive scalp that they can take. If they can beat Kilkenny, their confidence will soar before the championship. And I think they're in the right place. I think Tony Kelly's on form. They obviously got Colin Galvin back. John Conlon is doing bits at centre half back. So I think that Clare might get the job done on the weekend. I'm going with Clare to win this game as well. I could be proven horribly wrong. Kilkenny could go down and slap Clare up. But I guess only time will tell.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, I'm not very confident on that one. So yeah, I think that one will be entirely dependent on what sort of teams are picked. Maybe Kilkenny might look to build momentum entirely and send down a team with TJ Reid in it, and then win. But yeah, I think if I have to be pushed on it now, I'm going to go Clare very narrowly to get over the line. Perhaps a draw.
Yeah, a draw could be a shout there either. On Sunday, the games will take place at 1:45 in Division 1. Waterford against Tipperary in Walsh Park.
Yeah, another interesting one. Kind of. I think that I will go Tipperary. I think they've kind of started to look a little bit better now. The last couple of weeks, they're building a bit of momentum here. They've put some very strong teams out. And I think they'll have a bit too much for Waterford. Waterford are scoring a lot of goals at the moment, but I think they'll be coming up against a pretty assured Tip backline with kind of Paddy Marr full back and Brendan Marr centre half back. They'll find it very difficult to break their way through that middle of that defence. So I think Tipperary by a few.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that Tipperary might just have a little bit too much for Waterford. As good as Waterford look going forward against Galway, I think they do look shaky at the back. And with the form that Jason Ford and Noel McGrath are in, I think that spells trouble for Waterford, unfortunately. The next game, Cork against Galway and Porky Creeve at the same time. This is a mouth-watering game. Two teams who attack very much. They don't really spend too much time thinking about defence during the league. We've mentioned how talented Cork's forward line is. We've mentioned how talented Galway's forward line is. What a game this could be.
Yeah, I've found it very difficult to predict for both of these teams so far. Their lineups have kind of changed considerably throughout the entire league, like so far. So I think it's very, very difficult one to predict how it goes. Like, because Cork could have the full strength team out next week, and Galway can make a few changes, and then before you know it, the favourites shift. But I would probably go with Galway. I think Galway might bring back in Nylands, and it might bring back a few more players into the team that won't necessarily weaken it whatsoever. So I think Galway just look a bit too how free scoring they are right now, and I think Galway will get over the line in the end.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I think that Cork will know that Limerick are playing a game against Westmeath, so Limerick will have time to watch the Cork game, and I think the deception that's going on between Cork and Limerick will continue this weekend, and I think because of that, Galway will get a bit of an easier chance to get a win. I think they'll take it. I'm going with Galway to win this game. Moving on from that game now, Westmeath against Limerick. So Westmeath have been taking beatings from pretty much every team in Division 1, and the league has seemed to save the best for last, as the All-Ireland champions of two of the last 3 seasons come down to play them in Cusack Park, Mullingar. And I fear for them in this game. I think Limerick are going to hammer them.
Yeah, I think it's they saved the worst to last. I think for whoever made the fixtures for this, but I think Westmeath just need to pray that Limerick send down maybe the under 21s or something. But there's no kind of you can't imagine any scenario where Limerick don't win this comfortably, really. And I think the only chance Westmeath have of keeping the scoreline down is Limerick really rotating and giving like a fair few fringe lads a run here, and then maybe Westmeath could be competitive like the Waterford game earlier in the league. But Limerick are going to win this one.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it would be a good chance because Westmeath do have some brilliant hurlers, the likes of Tommy Doyle and Robbie Greville. And I think if Limerick did put out a couple of inexperienced lads, the likes of Colin Coughlin, I think it would be good for them to get game time against the likes of Doyle and Greville, because these lads are top class hurlers. They're just not in a top class team. And yeah, I think Limerick are going to get the job done, but I think it's an opportunity for Kiley to give experience to his fringe players, as you've said.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so it will be interesting. I think. So I just think Westmeath just have to hope that Limerick don't come down with a team of like Delan and Hayes and and Hegarty and all these who've been kind of rested a little bit last week and ready to go coming down here next week. So I think it's Limerick. Limerick will be comfortable enough there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And before we wrap the show up completely, we have to give a massive shout out to Offaly. We've spoke at length on the show about how much we would love Offaly to make it back to the big time, and they've made it back to Division 1. They've come such a long way under Michael Fennelly, and I'm delighted to see them get back promoted again.
Yep, absolutely. I think like we saw where they kind of had ended up like the fall kind of in recent years down in kind of 2B as well, even as far as there. And then the difficulty they've had kind of in getting back up. So to see them kind of back where they belong, they've been historically a powerhouse kind of in hurling. And so, yeah, I think it was kind of something kind of missing for Division 1 without kind of an Offaly team in it. So yeah, I think Fennelly's done an absolutely fantastic job kind of taking over from where they were. So yeah, I think the sport will be much improved having them back up where they belong, up the top table, and hopefully we can see them doing like what Antrim are doing currently and competing and putting it up to all the big teams.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And the one thing that is clear as well is Fennelly has helped to develop some absolutely fantastic hurlers. The likes of Oisin Kelly, the likes of Owen Cahill, who was a goalkeeper, but now he's come outfield and he looks even better outfield than he looked in goal. This has been a wonderful year for Offaly, and I think it would be very interesting. I would tip them to win the John McDonagh Cup, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you look at other players, like Liam Langton scored 2-3 at the weekend. He's been absolutely fantastic during the entire league so far. He's probably been the player of 2A so far. Owen Cahill scored 111 at the weekend. He's been putting up huge tallies for consistently ever since he came out of goal, really, and seems to be one of the best free takers around. Like so, there's plenty of players there coming through for Offaly, and yeah, so it's exciting to see kind of, and it'll be interesting if they keep building.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, guys, so that is the wrap for our hurling coverage of last weekend's action and our preview for next weekend's action in the Allianz Hurling League. Luke, it's been a pleasure. This was a wonderful weekend of hurling. All right, guys, take care, and we hope you enjoyed the podcast and have a good one.